Welcome back to the Success Blueprint with Grider and Peterson. We're grateful you guys are back with us. We're excited to talk today. We have Max on our team here. He has been in the business now for about 2 years, and he's been crushing it. And so we just wanted to bring him on and talk a little bit about kind of what's worked, what hasn't worked, what he was surprised about, because it's always, there's our perspective coming into it, but then there's always a perspective of someone coming in for the first time into the industry. So we just wanted to share that perspective with people who may be thinking about getting into real estate, or even kind of behind the scenes for people who have just bought and sold and used agents before. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm excited.
So I guess first of all, we just want to just ask, so you've been in business 2 years, you've done pretty well, really well actually, especially compared to, when you go over all agents and that, I mean, your numbers are phenomenal. So I guess when you first got in, what was your first, I guess, delusion? Like you came into it, of course, you probably had ideas in your head of what was going on, but you first come into the business, your first like month or two, what were the biggest things that you're like, wow, this is very different than I anticipated?
Yeah, I mean, I think any time that you're going from a job where you're getting paid on a monthly basis and when you're working for people, it's always very different when you're going to work for yourself. And so obviously you've got ideas of what that looks like, but then I don't think you really realize what it's like until you're actually doing it.
Okay.
And you realize, once your paychecks from your other jobs stop to come in, and you realize, okay, if I don't perform here, if I don't close some sales, I'm not going to be making any money. I think it's definitely a paradigm shift of just how you think and how you operate and things like that. And I've always been in sales too. So, commission-based jobs and whatnot is nothing new, but I think it's definitely different because there is such a learning curve to real estate. Yeah. And it truly is 100% based on your own personal efforts. And so I think just that first 4 weeks, it was definitely a little bit of a wake-up call to like, you know what, pressure's on, let's get going, let's get rolling, you got to learn. And, but it's been an awesome 2 years, and I feel like I have been lucky and blessed. And it's been nice being on a team to be able to teach you because that learning curve is a lot shorter. I feel like if I wasn't on a team, I'd honestly probably would have taken me 5, 6, 7 years realistically to be able to get to where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think from the outside looking in, as far as real estate goes, I think a lot of people get into real estate because they think, it's pretty easy. I know a lot of people are buying and selling homes, and I know a lot of people that I can probably help out with that, and they think that it must look easy from the outside. I don't know, maybe that's just my perception, but I think a lot of people get in because they think, it's easy money, you don't have to work that hard.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's a common trend amongst most things right now, and everybody too. I mean, I think that it goes across the board with a lot of industries. I don't think real estate's the only industry that's like that. True. I mean, I think a lot of people look at there's 100 different jobs out there, and they're like, man, they make good money for not a lot of work that looks really easy. And it's really easy to simplify things, but as soon as you dive into it a little bit deeper, you realize how complex it is. And that's definitely how it was for me too. I'm jumping into real estate. You don't realize just how many moving parts there are throughout the real estate process and transaction. The legal risks that are involved in real estate, and just all of the little nuanced things that you learn as you become an agent. You just don't realize that when you're a customer or a client versus when you're the actual agent. Because when you're a customer or a client, you're only getting those texts a couple of times a day or a couple of times a week, or those calls whenever something's going on, but you don't see, the 100 calls, the 100 texts, the 100 emails and stuff that your real estate agent and his team are sending out to be able to make sure that you're able to close on your home. And so that is definitely one thing that kind of surprised me. It was like, wow, there's a lot more to real estate that I've got to learn than just going and walking, opening homes, showing homes.
Definitely a lot of moving parts. And I think that was a big shocker to me too when I got into the business, is just that how much there was to it, to every transaction. And I would say that starting real estate, I loved the job that I had prior to real estate, but I would say I've worked harder and looked for ways to become more efficient in real estate more so than I ever did before my other jobs. Do you find that the same as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it all just goes back to that fact that you're working for yourself. Whereas when you're working for, a large corporate company or things, I think there's a lot of leeway in time and in tasks and whatnot, and you can still go ahead and get paid and still find success. I think that's just kind of like the common trend of corporate America. But when you work for yourself, you realize, okay, man, if I'm going to be working 50, 60 hours this week, I've got to be able to make it count. And so you're looking for those items and those tasks that really move the needle versus just trying to fill up the times. And that way you can clock out at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting into, I guess, what was your first, if you remember, what's your first kind of big lesson that you learned? Either a mistake you make, because every real estate agent, as they come in, you can't know everything. Even if you're on a team and you have an advantage and you have people behind the scenes helping you and kind of teaching you, so you learn that curve, as you mentioned, is much faster. But what are maybe a couple of the lessons or one of the lessons that you remember early on that kind of changed your mindset a little bit on what you're doing?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one distinct moment or one specific lesson that kind of comes to mind. But the thing that's really cool about real estate is, and it's kind of the blessing and the curse of real estate, is because one, it is really easy to get your license. So there's a lot of people that do it. But your education in real estate comes from transactions.
Yeah, true.
And so the more transactions you do, just the more you learn and the more comfortable you are with things, the more things you're aware of in your contracts and in the paperwork and everything else along the way, which is why one of the biggest reasons why it helps to have a team is you've got people there holding your hand, through every contract and every deal. But I think the biggest thing that you learn is just in this business, you have to be 100% honest. You have to be 100% transparent, and you have to be a very clear communicator. If you're not a clear communicator in real estate, then you're probably going to have a hard time. And there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come back to bite you. Because a lot of times we do have to bear the bad news. We do have to bear the things that people don't want to hear necessarily, but we, at the end of the day, they're hiring us to be their consultant. And so we have to tell them the things that they need to know so then that way they can adjust and act in their best interest.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that's, a lot of people didn't realize that about real estate. Maybe they went through the process and it was pretty easy, or their transaction happened to go pretty smooth, where not all of them do. And a lot of times there's things that come up through the transaction where you have to shift and adjust. But I think you're right. It's going to them not just with, hey, here's this big problem, but here's the problem, and here's basically our options to deal with it.
Yeah.
Which one is best for you, and here's the benefits and the risks of each option, right? And to move forward. And so just kind of getting them educated so that they can make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah. And I want to throw that question back on you too, because we kind of came from different backgrounds and whatnot, and you had a very long professional background before you jumped into real estate, and obviously being in sales. But I guess what were some of the biggest lessons or things that you learned those first few years from you making that transition? Just because you were a little bit older, you had a handful of kids at home, in a different phase, old and seasoned and looking good, salt and pepper, but you're in definitely a different phase of life than I was when you made that transition to real estate.
I think it was a couple things. I think when I had never thought about real estate before, and a friend who we were actually thinking about moving to make life a little bit easier for us, and came to us and asked, hey, have you ever thought about real estate? Kind of said no. And then I thought about it, and it took me a good 7 months before I actually made the transition. So it wasn't something that I was told about and then I just kind of jumped right away. It was something like, well, that's an idea, but I don't know if I want to do it. And then jumping in, I had always been what I was doing before was sales, and I was on my own. Our headquarters was back east, and so I was from home and just traveling, right? And so the autonomy and the time myself and really kind of trying to be self-motivated was already there, which is a part of being a real estate agent. And so, and I was still paid I mean, I had a small salary, but I think I was at about 80% of what I made was commission and 20% was salary. So it's not like I could live off the salary, right? And so I was a little bit used to that. But like you said, you kind of get things rolling in the business I was in, you build it up and you build it up and you build it up, and then you kind of sustain that. Whereas real estate is more of a, you are building a business for sure, but at the same time, a lot of people look at it as, hey, it's once the deal's done, you kind of got to start over, right? In some respects you do. And so that was the biggest change for me, I think. Realizing that I learned pretty quickly that to make what I wanted to make and to do what I needed to do and help enough people to make it worth it for me, I realized that I had to become more efficient. Yeah. And so I just started looking at ways to become, one, better at what I did, better at helping people find the right place. So instead of somebody looking at 50, 100 houses and then picking one that they kind of liked because the one they really liked got sold, and missing out on some of those, I learned pretty quickly that, okay, if I can be efficient, not only does it help me, but it helps the clients as well in 99% of the cases. And so I think looking for ways to just be the most efficient and know the market and know the area. I think that was the biggest thing. We had been here in Idaho for about 3-4 years when I switched to real estate, and I really didn't know the area because I was traveling a lot, and I knew a few restaurants and a few stores.
Knew where Papa Tom's was.
Yeah, exactly. Knew where Papa Tom's was, knew where a couple good restaurants were that we like, and then that's about it. And I didn't really know neighborhoods or even price points of where people are at. And so I think early on I realized how important knowing statistics are, knowing the area statistics and knowing the neighborhoods are. And if you're showing enough homes, you get to learn that really quickly. So I think that's what kind of changed a little bit. And so then when you're talking with people and they're like, well, I want this and this and this, like, hey, kind of that narrows it down to really a couple neighborhoods of what you're describing in a lot of cases, right? Because a lot of the homes and neighborhoods are very specific and very kind of unique a lot of times to that neighborhood or to that area. If they need a specific spot to go to as far as work or things like that, they want to be on south side of town or west side or Ammon or whatever that is, or even up in Rigby or Madison County. But I think a lot of it is just knowing that enough to where you can actually help your client walk through that process. And if they know what they want and it's fitting these categories and you're like, yeah, these subdivisions are going to be awesome, and you go through them, they're exactly what they want, you can help them so much better than if you're just looking at every home out there. Because location is something they can't change, right? Yeah. That's something I learned pretty quick is, and I think you did in your last purchase, right? For yourself. I think you really, you love the house, but I think the key factor in that was the location. And because the house
something you can never change. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you really want to be, it's the old thing. It's been forever, right? Location. But I think that was something that I never really took to heart until I was an agent and I realized that actually is 100% true. Yeah. You can't change the location. You want to be where you want to be. And that can vary, totally depending on what the people want. And so I think knowing the market, knowing the area, and doing whatever you can to be the expert in that can what really help your clients, even sellers. Knowing the area, knowing those neighborhoods, knowing what's going on in those neighborhoods, it helps sellers as well, because then you know where to position them against maybe other people that have been selling in the neighborhood, right? So that you can sell, so they can sell their house for the top dollar the quickest time possible. So it's funny with real estate, there's a lot of things in it. What's something in real estate that you realized that was something you had to get used to? Like something that you're like, wow, this is so different than anything else I've done.
Well, one thing is that item that we were kind of talking about this morning in our team meeting. Being in a sales background, you typically look at other salespeople as kind of your enemies, right? You're competing, or like your competition, right?
Yeah,
you're competing against other salespeople or other things to be able to win these clients. Whereas in real estate, it's kind of funny because you're working with your competition. You know, you're working with all the other agents, and you have to be friendly with them, and you have to be nice and cordial. Obviously, that's just being a good person in general,
of course.
But you have to be able to build those relationships a lot more in this industry than in any other sales industry, because you don't want a bad relationship to hinder a deal.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely kind of the biggest adjustment piece for me, was being able to be like, oh, this is interesting. You know, you may have been talking to the same client for a while as another agent trying to compete and win their business, and then you're working with them on a different deal on two separate ends of the deal with buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
So,
that is very different. It's kind of one of those things that you want to know them all, but there's so many new agents out there that just don't have a lot of experience or do a lot of transactions, right? Like, I know NAR puts out that, I think, in fact, I just saw a report I think today, it said something to the effect of 60% of agents sold less than like 2 or 3 deals the last couple of years.
Wow. That's crazy.
So, and that's a big chunk. So there's a lot of people in real estate that treat it as a hobby versus an actual, their job.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's a big thing to take too, is some of those people, you kind of have to walk them along through the process as well, because it might have been 6 months or a year before they had a transaction. And sometimes rules have changed or laws have changed or things like that in the meantime. And you're kind of helping them walk them through that, because you want that to be a good experience for both the buyer and seller, even though you're only representing one side of it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And going back to like the benefits of a team, that's one thing that helps you get that, because if you're on a team that's doing a high volume of transactions, you're around that process a lot more. And so the learning curve is just so much quicker.
Yeah.
Versus if you're solo, I mean, and you're only doing 6 deals a year, you know, there's only so many things that can go wrong, or different things that you could learn from 6 deals a year, versus if you're on a team that's doing 200 deals a year. Yeah. And you yourself are doing 20 plus 30, 40 deals a year, you're learning at just a much more rapid rate.
Yeah.
You know, if you just do the math, I mean, someone who does 24 deals in 1 year, they've got relatively, I mean, from experience speaking, 4 times the amount of knowledge of someone who does 6 deals a year.
Yeah.
You know, just because they've seen so many different types of transactions. And so that's one thing that's really stood out to me. First, coming into the industry, is just there's such a broad variety of different levels of education of agents.
True.
You know, and so you've got agents that are experts at what they do. They are very good. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a long time, or even a short amount of time, but they're just have been operating at a very high level. And then you've got agents too that, like you said, it's a hobby, which is totally fine, but you end up kind of having to, you know, help out a little bit more along the way. And then there's just a little bit more risk and liability in that, when, you know, you're only doing a handful of deals a year, even if you've had your license for 15 years.